Johnny Cohen, Johnny, an unbelievable game, unbelievable drama. It never ceases to surprise us.
I think 3 years in a row, like, there's only been 1 point in between, and like, it was a question of who's going to be at the lead when the final whistle went, and thank God it was us. We're delighted.
There's no rhyme or logic to any game like this, Johnny, is there?
No, like, tactics kind of go out the window when you're hitting 60 minutes. You have 10 minutes left. It's about heart, it's about guts. You see lads plucking ball in the air, you get into the battle zone. We're delighted, really.
Is it just a case of closing down space and trying to block your teammates, trying to cover for them? Is that all it is, really? Work rate?
It's all on instinct, really. Like, you know, you train so much. You put in the hard yards. You know, you got to be upstairs. You know, we're just delighted to be on the right. It could have went, if they went down for another 5 minutes, could have won it too. Like, you don't know.
Johnny, how hard has the last 5 weeks been? Because you're without a game and the whole country was talking you up. That's not simple.
No, but we had been there before, you know. We felt a lot of, you know, we were disappointed with our previous Leinster final results. We wanted to win the Leinster final. We're exactly where we want to be, and come 4 weeks, where else would you want to be? Only back here again.
Johnny, thanks very much. Back to you in studio, guys.
A breathless Johnny Cohen, fresh from the battle zone, as he said, chatting to Damien Lawler on Sky Sports after an epic match on Sunday. Hello and welcome to Talking Points, our GAA show here on Balls.ie, brought to you in partnership with Sky Sports. My name is Mark Farley and I'm joined by Mick McCarthy as always. We'll be discussing the death of football for at least the next 2 weeks anyway, later on in the show. But Mick, we have to start with that hurling match.
Unbelievable. A third semi-final in a row between Galway and Tip, a third classic in a row, a third 1 point game. It was all about Joe Canning after the game though. He got that epic winning point. He actually got the last 5 points of the game for Galway, and afterwards JJ Delaney and James O'Connor were talking about just how great Joe was.
Good to hear from Joe Canning there. He mentioned a few of his misses, but he was ultimately the difference at the end of this game. And just talk us through what it is and what it takes to be a player like that in that crucial moment, in that crucial second.
In the first half, he didn't have his greatest half now by any matter of means, but he worked his way into the game. He got into a few hooks and blocks and tackle as well. And you see him scoring vital points at a crucial time for a Galway team there as well. But he was always working hard, and you see him on the ball, and he's just so relaxed when he's on his game. He found his radar in the second half. I put the first half down to, he was out injured for 3 or 4 weeks before this match. I put it down to that. But he stepped up to the mark as well. He's scoring vital frees at vital times. James said he scored the last 5 points for Galway as well. Even to go back to his own 45 for this, he could have been disappointed, dropped my head, geez, I didn't score this. But where was he? He's run up the field and snuffing out the danger. Where's the ball going to break? The ball broke to him. Johnny Cohen got it, thrown it back to Joe. Joe he just backed himself to score from there. Absolutely phenomenal play.
Yeah, and I suppose, listen, sometimes, well, experience, JJ, can be hugely important, because you have a day when you miss a few frees and things aren't going your way. You know, a lesser player, a less experienced player, the head might have dropped, but, you know, he had faith in himself, he trusted himself, and, you know, he didn't shirk from taking those opportunities on. And that wasn't an easy winner,
no,
you know, but he nailed it from the sideline. And credit to Galway as well, and Johnny Cohen, who I thought had a great match in the middle of the field. You know, he looked up, took the right option, got the ball to the shooter, and I suppose it was a fitting way to win the match.
Yeah, one of those scores I think that people will always remember where they were. I was actually in Kingdom of Sports in Mullingar, 4 Cavan lads and 2 Westmeath lads standing there just, what would you even call it, awed.
Mesmerised.
Yeah, mesmerised at the TV screen going, oh, I can't believe this is happening. And I think everybody took to Twitter straight after the game. I pulled myself together to just tweet clutch. That was actually a text message to my local mechanic. I don't know how that ended up on Twitter. Mick, here's how you reacted. Which I think was an apt description of the moment.
I don't think I could say it any better, to be honest, in the cold light of day. But yeah, just unbelievable. I don't know if there's ever been. I talked last week about the Roscommon Mayo game from last week, where I was standing up for the last 5 minutes. I think I was standing up for the entire second half of that game. But unbelievable stuff from Joe at the end. Yeah, getting a bit of criticism for not having the greatest game for the first 50 minutes, but when the last 20 minutes were there to be won, he was just unbelievable. I mean, that's what being a great player is. That's what grabbing the game in the scruff of the neck is, what you're supposed to do when you're, you know, probably the best player in the country. And Jesus,
his ability to get that shot away, especially as well after missing the free. I know it just dropped short, but like, you know, he had wiped that from his head straight away, and he was just getting on the next ball.
Yeah.
And he was like,
but just to even trust yourself to hit that ball is just to trust your technique, your bottle, your clutch-like ability, whatever that expression would be, to even go for that there. And it was just straight over the bar from the second he hit it. You can see it on his face, actually, just how happy he was. But even there's a picture of just while the ball is in the air and he knows it's over straight away. Yeah,
exactly. Brilliant. But what a game. Unfortunately, Saturday night, the football, we weren't as lucky. Dublin, reigning Ireland champions, had a 10-point win over Monaghan. A bit of a non-event in the end, but it is interesting to look at how good Dublin were and what tactics they're going to take going into Tyrone. So during the game, James Horan and Peter Canavan were discussing the width Dublin brings to their attack and just how potent that'll be against Tyrone.
They're so strong, so good, so disciplined in what they're doing, and Monaghan aren't putting the pressure on them. That you can see how he picks up that ball here, simple step inside and kicks it over. That's too easy. Monaghan have numbers back, but Dublin are so good, so patient, and their movement is so good that Monaghan aren't getting a hand on them. See James McCarthy picking it up here, just accelerating in and just popping over there. That score from James McCarthy, that was at the end of the first half, was as good an example of keeping width in your attack as you'll see. That came from a turnover, and they started and they brought it out wide onto the right hand side where there was 4 Dublin players. Moved it across the other side, 2 were keeping wide, and it gave James McCarthy the opportunity to go straight down the middle.
We're going to pick up on a point James made pre-game just now, and Paul Early made in the commentary as well, about Dublin's width in attack, complementary of it. Then there's a few other counties that do it better. Show us the width in action and show us the benefits of playing players out wide, dragging defenders out wide.
Yeah,
more important.
you know, we're always looking for something different from this Dublin team. I think we're getting to see it today. And James talked about the width. This is the very first point of the game, Brian, Paul Mannion. But how did he have that one-on-one situation? If you want to look at the men inside, and this looks like it's a rehearsed move. You have men inside and you have your centre half forward, and in order to create space you have Kevin McManaman coming this way. Paul Mannion will go out to the wing, and the centre half forward Conor Callan makes a run out, takes his man with him, and at the last second he runs into the space that the 2 men have left. So right from the throw-in there's obvious movement, there's a plan, but the 2 men that go out, both Mannion and McManaman, they stay out. And the idea of that is that if they don't get the ball, if they get the ball, okay, they're one-on-one situation. But if they don't, there's space, there's gaps down the middle. And the other point that we noticed during the game, Brian, any of their inside forwards are crossing the goals or in round the middle sector, they don't stay there. They're on the move. It's nearly like playing the basketball. When you're inside the zone, you have 3 seconds either to get in, get out. If you're going in there, leave that space free. And in this case, look at the width is still there. When Mannion picks up this ball, there's at least from one side of the pitch to the other, they maintain their distance, you know, the 72 metres. So that element of their play has been very obvious today. And even though Monaghan are getting men back, they're finding it very hard to deal with.
I have to say, I love that camera angle in the Hogan stand. That's incredible to watch. I mean, you always hear managers on about keeping width in the play. You hear analysts on about, you know, pulling them wide and leaving the centre open especially against the defence, the blanket defence of Monaghan's. But Tyrone's is going to be twice as bad. You know, that tug value of that blanket in Tyrone is much higher than Monaghan's, and it's incredible just to see the width Dublin bring to the play.
Yeah, and one player that they will have back for that game though, and I don't know where he's going to fit in that forward line. You're looking at Bernard Brogan struggling to get in there at the moment, but Diarmuid McConnelly will be back for the game. The Dublin fans haven't forgotten him though. They were there, the Blue Panther.
The Blue Panther, Anton O'Toole back in the day.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's his Blue Panther Nua, so you know he's.
Yeah, this is right.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
new Blue Panther.
It's just curled around. So yeah, Diarmuid's gotten not forgotten, you know. But I think after all of that, you know, hoo-ha about Connolly, Dublin are happily into a semi-final. He's going to be back now for the real games.
Yeah, exactly.
You
the
know?
real games is the semi-final against Tyrone that's coming up. Of course, Tyrone had won the curtain raiser on Saturday night, an 18-point win, just the 18 points to spare over Armagh. After the game, Peter Canavan and James Horan were talking about what Tyrone could take from that match going into the Dublin game.
Tyrone were just doing whatever they wanted. The second half, they got very sloppy at the start of the second half. The first 10 minutes, Tyrone were dropping balls, leaving it down, doing whatever they wanted. But Armagh didn't have the belief, didn't have the power or physique. And I think that was very evident throughout the course of the game that Tyrone just drove through tackles. You know, if there was any ball on the ground, they just went through them. So very comprehensive. Still not fully challenged.
Well,
Tyrone.
This is the point ultimately, Peter. What are Tyrone going to take out of this game?
Well, once again, the bench. Rachel, we were singing the praises of the bench before having scored 210 in the previous 3 games. You can now say that's 412. The bench has contributed to the scoring charts, but they're now scoring goals as well. And you know, James is correct. Armagh's performance was very flat, but Again, the point that I made earlier on, the time was Tyrone would have been happy to go for points when goals were on. Now, when goals are on, they're going for them, and that's good. But it leaves competition for places in this team is now serious, and the real test is yet to come. We expected, and these Tyrone players have expected from early days to be playing Dublin in an All-Ireland semi-final. Now, Dublin have to account for Monaghan, but they've got their wish now up to this point, and I still think there's more to come out of this Tyrone team. I have no doubt Mickey will go through this game in some detail. There's aspects that he mightn't be too happy with, but they have things to work on. There's competition for places, and as Mickey would say himself, they're probably in a good place.
Probably not in a bad place after beating absolutely hammering their biggest rivals, but really impressive stuff from Tyrone. I love that Mulgrew goal that we were shown there, his second goal, just that beautiful little dummy hand pass at the end and then kicking it over the keeper's head. Pure confidence that you can have in a game when you're winning by that much and you're dominating, but something that Tyrone aren't afraid to try, like, isn't it?
They're always, the top of Tyrone being rigid in their system.
Oh, sorry, this is just... they tried to do a Dirty Dancing reenaction during the middle of the game. Didn't quite work out. Colin Kavanagh not putting his hands up there.
He's too busy sitting in an invisible toilet, giving birth to a ball. Tyrone, they're not afraid to express themselves, even though they do play with that kind of defensive system. When they go forward, you saw with O'Neill in the Ulster final, you see it with Mulgrew now. They're a stylish team. Yeah, well, they have, it's all based around a rigid system, and then when you get to the top, then you can try things. And I think we talked earlier on the show about Tyrone's uniform, that they arrive to games all dressed the same way. They all, play in a very similar way with the blanket defence moving forward. But the only thing that is left of their individuality is their haircuts. Yeah. Some amazing haircuts on that Tyrone team. And I think that translates to their football. So they have uniform with a nice little individual haircut, and then they have uniform blanket defence with nice little individualism in the way they finish. Mickey Hart is a genius. Fresh Barnetts and cool finishes. Exactly, yeah. It sounds like a terrible, terrible new GA magazine. So anyway, we should get on to Mayo, because that was the game that we were most looking forward to this weekend in the Football Championship, the replay yesterday against Roscommon. I think after the hurling was so good on Sunday, our resident Leitrim poet here on the show had a nice little suggestion about getting them hurleys. We probably thought, look, those lads are finding their own. As it turned out, it might not have been a bad idea in retrospect. A pretty poor game, a 22-point win for Mayo. Pretty good performance though. I mean, that was them back at their best. Yeah. For the first time all year. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Mayo's record though in this decade. So since 2011, they're now going into their 7th All-Ireland semi-final in a row. In the last 5 years before now, they've been beaten by the eventual All-Ireland champions in either the semi-final or the final. And in the last 3 years, they've been beaten by the eventual All-Ireland champions after a replay. Yeah, it's incredible. That's incredible going. So they haven't got over the line, but it's not as if they haven't been beaten by the best in those games, and in a very narrow margins. It could have went either way. There was a lot of talk of the big three before this game. I think that's really unfair on them. Completely. People are writing them off every week. Yourself and Karen Mannion wrote them off for the replay. Yeah, we went for the team who were beaten by 22 points. Yeah. Proud of that one. Yeah. But even say Lee Keegan, I thought we were having a quiet enough championship. So far as he's on the road too long, given the intermediate club run he had at Westport as well. Then he goes out and he's man of the match in the first game. Doesn't even play the second day and they win by 22 points. They're an incredible team. And the hot take thing is kind of driving me mad at this stage. On Saturday morning, it was a great football championship. Come Saturday night, there was only a big 3. And then come Monday afternoon, it's there's a big 4. And people were just this championship's awful, just a big 4 teams, whatever. The same people that had said a big 3. So they're just kind of change with the wind. Okay. I agree with you, and I was the one who brought up the fact that Mayo don't get enough respect for their record, but you have to actually look at it. Mayo hadn't performed well up until that point. That was the first time they've shown any evidence of it so far this year, and they were phenomenal. And now it's going to be a great semi-finals. But up until now, has it been a great championship? I don't know where that's come from. There's been some interesting games, but I was just looking at the 11 games Tyrone, Dublin and Kerry have played so far this year, and they've won them by a combined 133 points. That's an average of over 12 points a game, and here's worse. There's a couple of outliers in there, but the lowest margin of victory was 8 points. That was Kerry Kerry beating Clare by 6 points was the lowest, and that was
Kerry's first day out and not really a contest. And then they beat Galway by 8 points, and Tyrone won the Ulster final by 8 points. They're huge wins. All three of those teams have waltzed into a semi-final without ever being tested. I don't think that's great. I don't think that's a sign of a great championship. Mayo have blundered their way through and found form and eventually kind of have made it with them. And look, I mean, ultimately, if we have another 3 or even 4 or 5, depending on replays, great games, we won't be talking about how bad a championship it was up until August. Yeah. But it hasn't been great so far.
Well, there's been some good games. I mean, you've got like down Monaghan, you had the Carlow run, you had any game involving Mayo. To be fair to them, they're always worth watching for different reasons.
Anyway,
even Galway Roscommon was just, you know, it was a bit of a hammer in the end, but it wasn't what you expected. There's been a few upsets. Kildare Armagh the week before was a great game. Like, I mean, it's just everyone's, I think, finding their own level, and the problem it always has is that it's in the same weekend as a brilliant hurling semi-final. Yeah. If you look at the hurling quarter-finals, granted Clare came back into it at the end, but it never looked in doubt that Waterford or Tipperary were going to win those games.
Yeah, I think it's probably a fair enough point to say that they're being played at different levels of the championship on the same week, and that might be an unfair comparison. Anyway, this debate will go on and on. We should probably focus on more positive stuff, because it was a positive weekend, and that's where we bring in our favourite segment, our GAA Fan of the Week. My first nomination today is this old gentleman. I love this so much. So Joe Canning has just scored the point to win the game for Galway. One of the most dramatic moments in this or any other GAA season. Everybody around him is losing his head, and this man here,
around the country, I'd say.
Exactly, yeah. But if you just look around there, this man here is sitting beside a Tipperary family who he's obviously been talking to for the whole game. And instead of just like jumping up and down like a madman, his first instinct is that the man beside him, that's proper. It's a proper commitment to gentlemanliness. Exactly. Yeah. So he just shakes his hand. Hard luck, man. You know, you'll be back again next year. We're off to the final.
I mean, there were some great images from the crowd during the game. I loved Buff Egan's Snapchat. He was giving updates from the bottom of the Cusick stand, and what I particularly enjoyed is this woman who's behind Buff, who accidentally ended up in a filter. I don't think Buff even meant that. Her different emotions throughout the game. If you look at Buff's updates, you can see every time it moves on, she's doing something. So here she is, she's praying. The next one, if you look, she's got her head in her hands. It was too much for her. Here she's in the middle of actually blessing herself with the left hand there. And then I think
she's just clearing her hair.
And there's at the end of the game. She's delighted with herself, as is the lad beside her. But like, I think that just was a sort of a chronological diary of all the emotions every Galway and Tipperary fan went through in that match.
Yeah, Buff committed to the poncho, I see, for the entire game, despite the rain stopping. My fan of the week, though, it's more of a family of the week, really, and this is, you know, a little bit sentimental and soppy on me, but I thought there was no greater image this weekend than Joe Canning and his parents after the game. So the Cannings, I think, are fans of the week this year, because they were there for their minor game to watch their grandson get man of the match as Galway reached the All-Ireland minor final, and then their son goes and does that. Look at the pride in that man's face there.
And Ollie doing a fine job on Sky Sports.
Ollie, exactly, yeah, doing the sideline reporting on Sky, absolutely flying it, you know. So they had a lot to be proud of. I just think that's one of the great images of our time, Mark.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it from us this week. Hopefully this weekend's second hurling semi-final will be every bit as entertaining. We will be back next Monday looking back at that and all the action from the weekend. But until then, mind yourself.